Hi, I'm Jackie, and I'm here to talk to you about shade perennials. These are a variety of shade perennials that we grow here at Moose and Squirrel, and I just want to introduce you to some of them that you can use in your shade garden. All right, we're going to start with hostas, which are a popular shade perennial.
Hostas are very hardy, decorative, and low maintenance. They thrive in the shade and need very little attention. They come in many different varieties and sizes, so when picking out your hostas, pay attention to how you can fit them in your garden. Pay attention to the size that they grow and the color of the foliage. Some grow very small, maybe only 10 inches tall. Some can get as big as 4 feet tall and wide. Here at Moose and Squirrel, we have some varieties that only get about 12 inches tall and some that can get up to 48 inches tall. Also think about the colors you would like in your shade garden. Hostas come in a few different shades of greens, ranging from blues, dark greens, light greens, and some that look yellow. Then you have the variegated leaves that have whites, lime greens, and dark greens in them. Hostas do flower. Some have significant flowers and some are not as showy. Typically, flowering only will last 1 or 2 months during the season. You really are buying the plant for its foliage and how it shows off in your garden.
All right, next plant we're going to talk about is heuchera, which is one of my favorites for shade gardens. It's also known as coral bells, so if you hear say heuchera or coral bells, this is what we're talking about.
Heuchera are great for also adding color to your shade garden because the foliage comes in many different colors. Here at Moose and Squirrel, we have a few purple varieties, green, and cream or caramel colored varieties. They produce flowers, but also another plant you are picking because of its showy foliage. Heuchera is pretty low maintenance as well, so they are another easy care plant for your shade garden.
So our next plant we're going to talk about is ferns. Ferns love dark, damp conditions, so if you have that part of your yard that has that area you're not sure what to plant, this would be a great plant for that area.
Ferns don't produce flowers, but they can add a great texture to your garden with their whimsical fronds. Here at Moose and Squirrel, we have a couple different varieties from large ferns to very small ferns, green leaves, and even a few with some variegated leaves.
Our next plant we're going to talk about is dicentra, also known as bleeding heart. As you can see, the flower looks like a bleeding heart, and that's why a lot of people love these flowers.
This plant is great for shady conditions and is great for gardeners to place along shady borders or in woodland situations. Bleeding heart is one of the earlier bloomers, and you will see their flowers in early spring. By midsummer, you will be left with just their foliage, and the variety we have here has a small fern-like foliage that is soft to the touch. I would recommend mixing these into your shade garden for the early blooms to give you color when most plants haven't even started thinking about blooming yet.
All right, our next plant we have here is astilbe.
Astilbe get beautiful plume-like showy flowers atop their glossy fern-like foliage. Astilbe is great for adding some color to your shade garden. Flowers typically are red, pink, or white and can vary in size from 6 inches to 5 foot tall plumes. Here we have astilbe that gets around 2 foot tall. Astilbe can also tolerate damp conditions and is easy to maintain.
Hi, we're talking about shade perennials. What I wanted to talk about here was the ground cover called vinca or myrtle. It's a very good shade ground cover. I would say you would plant it at about 3 to 5 plugs per square foot to get good coverage. That's a 36 count plug. Once it's established, there's very, very little maintenance to it, and it should do well for you. The next item we wanted to talk about is kind of a different one. It's called plumbago or ceratostigma. There's 2 great names for you, isn't it? Ceratostigma is more of a ground cover type. It will go shade to sun, but the interesting part about a couple of different things. It's a beautiful blue flower in the summer, and it lasts well into the fall. And as you can see, it also gets red foliage in early spring and late in fall. So if you can't remember anything, remember ceratostigma. The last one, or the next one we want to talk about, it's not a ground cover, it is a ivy. It's a type of ivy that climbs. It's called Boston ivy. It is also a plant that will do well in sun or shade, but it is very aggressive. So if you need to cover a fence or a wall or your neighbor's house, this is an excellent plant. You can prune it back. It's very forgiving, but it grows quick. Boston ivy.